I would say there are three primary characteristics that define a destructive cult. First of all, a totalitarian leader, a charismatic leader who becomes an object of worship. Number two, that the group has a process of coercive persuasion to break people down, create a mindset of dependency upon the leader for critical thinking, and engenders undue influence. And then finally, number three, that the group does harm.
So I think the cult really came out of this concept of building this character, the father. And then what we did is we moved into the next step of that. We learned a lot about cults.
Ubisoft contacted me and we began to exchange information. You know, they basically bounced things off of me to see if they were historically accurate. So basically what I kind of brought to the table was my long history of work and research dealing with destructive cults. And I think what Ubisoft wanted to do in Far Cry 5 was contextualize their ideas and make sure that they fit within that universe.
Often, and that's what's really scary, was saying, yes, this exists, and actually it was worse. And so we were realizing that then again, reality was far stranger than fiction, and we could go actually way further than what we were doing.
I think the problem is that when you or I think cults, maybe what we think of is just a bunch of people running around in these weird robes and there's goats around or whatever else, and you're like, what is this? There's all this sort of inference to a very cliche version of a cult. And that's not what this is. We learned a great deal about them. And so we started to build this cult and think about it, and we started to say, how does it work? How would it be seductive?
When a destructive cult wants to take over a particular area, they will have people coming in, buying businesses, buying real estate, and they become a disproportionate amount of the population. I mean, if it's a small town, it may not take that many members of a destructive cult to tip the balance and for the town to become kind of a company town. There have been towns in the United States where the mayor of the town is a member of a group that has been called a cult. And I think in that sense, what Far Cry 5 represents is historically accurate and viable.
And like for instance, we spend a lot of time studying how a cult could get a hold of a space. And that's something that we now summarize in the beginning of the game in, I don't know, 2 sentences. But that strikes the point, and that will be enough.
Maybe 3 years ago it didn't feel this way, but the weirder the world gets and the scarier the world gets, then the more we experience a lack of control. And if somebody shows up at the right moment and says to you, listen, I understand things are scary, let me just talk to you about your tomorrow. I'm gonna make your tomorrow make sense. People go, okay, that sounds reasonable, and they fall into it.
You can feel that we are creeping towards the edge.